We are back on Morning Line. Our guest with us this morning is the Metro Vice Mayor Jim Shulman. I'm going to take some phone calls for us that waited through the break, and among other things, what we just talked about too. If I take your call and you want to issue an opinion, as I think Joe, we've got a couple, but our usual Joe is going to go first about the whole question of banning the use of tear gas by the Metro Police Department. What are your thoughts on that? Let's start off with Joe. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Nick.
Hey.
Since you mentioned the tear gas, I'll start with that.
Sure.
They keep taking the police department, the way they have to work and deal with these people that are protesting and stuff. I wonder what they expect the policemen to do when they have problems with these folks. They can't use tear gas. If you grab a hold of one of them, if you happen to grab them the wrong way, you're in trouble. You're probably going to get fired, lose your job. They put them in a precarious position. They can't enforce. I mean, I think they gave out 300 and something warnings about the mask yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's already a proven fact. These people are not going to wear the mask, and giving out a warning, I mean, that's just a waste of the police time and giving out warnings.
You know, they do have the power to give tickets and citations. It seems like it's still warnings. And Joe, I can get back to you. I know you may have some follows, but you were telling me, Vice Mayor, when's the last time the city police department used tear gas prior to this past May?
It's my understanding the last time they used it was in the 1970s.
In the 70s. So it's not something that's used every day. My take, just on front, I understand no one wants to get tear gas, and I want to get yours, is that as long as there are clear guidelines, and I'm not exactly sure how they're written for Metro Police, on certain instances to use them, okay, and not to be used to dispel peaceful protest. I'm against that. But if it gets violent, like where they're setting fire to the courthouse, I would much rather have the police tear gas to disperse the crowd than fire rubber bullets or worse, if you know what I mean. This idea of just getting rid of tear gas when it's rarely used, and if there are clear guidelines, sometimes, let's face it, that night it worked. The front of that courthouse cleared out pretty quick. Well, what do you think, Jim?
Well, I think anytime, I know that there's a lot of the stuff moving, and we obviously have a lot of pieces of legislation up tonight in the council, so we didn't have these same pieces of legislation up last year, so a lot of it is in response to what's going on, and I understand that. But I always want to be careful, you know, when something happens and then all of a sudden you see this wave of legislation, to make sure that we're not rushing through something and making sure that we understand what's going on. So I know people can disagree about the tear gas. I know that it wasn't used since the 70s, but it did seem to work, and I know people, you know, started choking and other stuff, but I don't think anybody, nobody died that night, nobody got shot that night, from what I understand. I mean, it was a non-lethal way of trying to disperse and control a crowd that was doing some damage out there. And you know, it's what I want to do is be careful and make sure we don't take away tools that are there for a particular reason, but that don't really hurt people or don't seriously hurt people. And so obviously, you know, when I heard that it hadn't been used since the 70s, I was going like, do they just have canisters back there since the 70s?
I was surprised they worked, right? Like, if they've been dusty back there and they replenish it?
I want peaceful ways of dealing with problems. And now, you know, it's one thing to disperse, you know, I lived in the 70s, you know, dispersing things that, you know, are there to disrupt peaceful protests. No, that's not it. But the thing in the courthouse, and most people watched that night, that was a little scary for a lot of people because you weren't really sure what was going to happen. I heard after the fact that the police were outnumbered. I don't know all the details of that, but as it turned out, the tear gas seemed to work. And if it does work, in that case, to try to settle down what could be a very volatile situation, then I'm not sure. I think we really have to be very careful about making sure we just don't take away things that are designed actually to kind of help protect everybody. And,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens with the bill tonight.
Joe, did you have a quick follow-up? I didn't mean to cut you off real quick. Go ahead, Joe. Okay, he may have gone on hold, but yeah, Joe's a good caller, and I wanted to get. We have another Joe online too, though.
Okay.
Joe, good morning, Joe. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Joe, the other Joe.
Yeah, sure.
And I just wanted to, I didn't know this was about using tear gas. I joined the program just a little bit late, and I thought it was about the budget.
Oh, it's that too. It's anything you want to ask about. That's fine.
Well, just about the, I think the vice mayor misspoke just one time when he was saying when a crowd is committing violence. Now, I'm all for peaceful protest. If someone has had their constitutional rights violated, I will stand with them. I will stand with them. I will protest with them. But when you say a crowd is committing violence, that is no longer a crowd. That is a mob. And what they're doing is illegal. And when you're committing violence, whether it's against people or against property, then I don't see where there's a peaceful alternative to stopping violence. I mean, cause and effect, and you have to respond, and you can't respond to violence with peace. Now, you have to do it, and you have to have it regulated. And I would have to just say, follow what's on the books. It seems to have worked. If it worked before, why do you want to change it? And that's just my comment on that. Now, as far as the budget goes, I think the problem people are having with the tax increase is we've heard this song and dance before. We've heard it many times before. In fact, to the point where we have heard that if we don't have this tax increase, we're going to have to shut the government down here in Nashville. We're not going to be able to provide government services for the poor people of Nashville. And now the problem with that is that was 30 years ago, or nearly 30 years ago, and I think I broke the horn on my automobile circling the Capitol building. And so that was, and here we are again, but guess what didn't happen? The government didn't shut down. And I believe we were about to be bamboozled then, because here we are today.
I think he makes a fair point that
Sure.
people feel that. Now, I would say that we don't know how it plays out, but we are in unprecedented times now with the pandemic and following the massive tornado. But he's correct. The public sometimes has a distrust, like they're being told one thing when it's really not as bad as it seems.
Well, and this is the other Joe. I think he's well-spoken, and I was listening very carefully. I mean, I think you always, whether it's a crowd or a mob, and understand what he's talking about there. What we're trying to do is somehow try to settle down if there is something dangerous going on. And I mean, the thing that I think people need to remember is that I don't think anybody expected anybody to attack City Hall or then go down and loot. We're not used to that, really, as Nashville. And so, you're trying to deal with an ever-changing situation, and you're trying to resolve it without anybody getting hurt. It's a long way from, when we had people marching through the streets on a cold night years ago, and, the police were serving hot chocolate. That's what we're used to. And now we have people, you see the people with fire trying to, do something to the courthouse. And I was at the courthouse yesterday, and there's still writings on the wall. It's going to take a while to clean that up. So I don't think we're necessarily used to all that. But I always want to try to resolve any type of situation like that peacefully and provide the police or any type of safety force with those types of peaceful efforts to try to resolve that if we can. The tax thing, what I'll tell the other Joe is one of the things that I think was very difficult in this situation with the pandemic is we saw this coming. I mean, people who were kind of keeping an eye on it saw it coming anyway. But during a pandemic, everybody was racing around trying to figure out how to deal with that situation. So people didn't have a lot of time to go out and educate the public on what was going on. And I understand people always feel like, I think Joe used the word bamboozled. This is a real situation. We're not trying to hide anything. This is simply what's sitting in front of us. And, I think, I would encourage Joe to watch the council meeting tonight and listen to the finance director. We just had this discussion that I don't think your government simply wants to just tax people for the benefit of taxing them. This was a unique situation that we've never been through before, and we're in some trouble. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to figure out how to deal with it, and just listen. But I will say that with the pandemic, there was not a lot of time or not a lot of chances to go out and go, this is what we're facing, and this is what it means. Told somebody last night, you could probably explain the situation in like 5 slides. The last one being, we have this giant hole in our budget. We can either add to the existing problem, or this is how you try to solve it.
And maybe part of that is educating and get it out. And at some point, the rubber hits the road. Listen, we got to take a break. When we come back, a bunch of calls. We'll take them quickly. We'll give quick responses so we can get to as many of you as possible when we come back right after this. Stay with us.